Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the grim mechanics of a modern military machine, one that seems specifically designed to consume its own soldiers at an absolutely staggering rate.
Just think about that question for a second, because it really gets to the very heart of what's happening in Ukraine. Right now, Russia is grappling with this exact weakness, a deep, profound failure in its recruitment system that is forcing it to replenish its army in some of the most brutal ways imaginable.
And the result is this. Well, it's an almost medieval style of warfare where troops are treated as completely expendable. But this isn't just a series of tactical mistakes. No, it's a deliberate strategy, one that was born from a recruitment system that is fundamentally, and perhaps irreversibly, broken.
Okay, so let's start right at the source of the problem. At the core of this disposable soldier machine is a really simple equation. Russia is struggling, badly, to replace its losses on the battlefield. The professional, modern military it once dreamed of is, well, it's gone. What's left is a desperate global scramble for bodies to feed the front lines.
At first, the Kremlin tried throwing huge amounts of money at the problem, and for a while it kind of worked. But that appeal has really faded. So now, the recruitment net has been cast much wider, and it's pulling from the most vulnerable parts of society, both inside and outside of Russia. A huge piece of this strategy has been the mass recruitment of prisoners. This was a practice first made famous by the mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin, and now the state has taken it over. They funneled an estimated 158,000 inmates to the front. The deal they're offered is grimly simple. Serve in a high-risk, almost suicidal assault unit, and you get a shot at freedom.
And this recruitment drive goes way beyond Russia's borders. Moscow has actually built a whole transnational system, often using pure deception, to pull in foreign nationals. In fact, Ukrainian intelligence has identified over 27,000 of these recruits from a staggering 135 different countries. We're talking about men from places like Nepal, India, and Cuba who've been lured by trafficking rings with fake job promises, only to find themselves forced into signing a military contract.
And here's the really shocking part. Not even legally protected soldiers are safe. We're seeing young men doing their mandatory one-year service being systematically pressured, threatened, or just tricked into signing contracts that turn them into frontline troops. It's a clear violation of Russian law. This kind of desperation, it just reveals the system's most critical flaw. It cannot find enough willing soldiers, so it has to rely on coercion.
So you have this broken recruitment system, and it directly fuels the infamous meat grinder tactics we keep hearing about. I mean, think about it. When your military has a surplus of poorly trained, expendable infantry, but a real shortage of experienced leaders and modern gear, you start to use your soldiers like ammunition.
The term meat assault has become the grim shorthand for Russia's signature tactic in Ukraine. But here's the thing that's really important to understand. This isn't just mindless slaughter. It's actually a calculated, if incredibly brutal, strategy. And this right here breaks down that grim logic. The strategy is often called reconnaissance by drawing fire. First, small assault groups, made up of those very same prisoners and coerced recruits, are sent forward. Now, the real purpose isn't to actually take the trench. It's to make the defenders shoot at them, revealing their hidden positions. Then, once those positions are exposed, Russia's real striking power, its artillery, drones, and heavy bombs, can systematically destroy them.
So let that sink in. The soldiers in those first waves are, for all intents and purposes, bait. They are the disposable part of a two-step process. It's a profoundly cynical doctrine where you use human lives, basically as sensors, to find the enemy, and then you use your advanced weaponry to eliminate them.
For the soldiers caught in this, the reality is just a nightmare, and enforcement is absolute. Intercepted phone calls have actually captured commanders threatening their own men to force them into these attacks, with one screaming that there was simply no possibility of falling back.
So what does this all mean for the individual soldier? Well, for these disposable troops, the most dangerous part of the war often isn't even the final firefight. It's the journey just to get there. The modern battlefield has become this transparent, drone-saturated kill zone.
This chart it's just mind-blowing. One claim from a Russian state reporter suggested that a staggering 8 or even 9 out of every 10 Russian casualties happened during the advance, before they even get into direct combat. The journey itself is the main killer.
So why is this happening? The reason, in one word, is drones. There's a deep band of territory that's under constant aerial surveillance. Ukrainian forces run what they call a reconnaissance carousel, whereas one drone's battery dies, another one immediately takes its place, ensuring there are literally no gaps in observation.
For the Russian infantry, this means they aren't just crossing a field. Today, we are digging into Russia's disposable soldier machine. We're going to break down the brutal, calculated system behind those infamous meat grinder tactics, and you'll see how it all stems from one fundamental crisis.
So let's start with this question, because it's at the heart of everything. The analysis we're looking at suggests that Russia's biggest problem right now isn't its tanks or its tactics. It's the simple fundamental ability to get soldiers to the front.
And this really gets to the core of it. The staggering losses we're seeing, they aren't an accident or a mistake. They're a deliberate feature. It's a strategy that was born out of a recruitment system that is completely, fundamentally broken.
Okay, so to understand the meat grinder, you first have to understand where the meat comes from. And that story starts with a failing recruitment system that is in a desperate, worldwide scramble for more bodies. You know, for years, the big plan in Moscow was to build a modern, professional, all-volunteer army. Well, that plan is a distant memory. Now they're forced to rely on this messy hybrid system, part mandatory conscription, part coercive volunteering, just to keep feeding the front lines. And this chart really shows you that desperation. The huge signing bonuses they were offering at the start, that appeal has faded. So the system now has to pull from the most vulnerable groups you can imagine, creating this patchwork army of people who are often unwilling or just straight up deceived. And the methods are just wild. We're talking an estimated 158,000 prisoners offered a pardon if they'll serve in the highest risk units. We're seeing men from places like Nepal and India lured with fake jobs. Migrant workers in Russia are being told to either sign up or get deported. And even young conscripts who aren't supposed to be in combat are reportedly being tricked or pressured into signing contracts that send them right to the fight.
So, you have this crisis in how you get soldiers. How does that actually play out on the battlefield? Well, it leads directly to the tactic that has come to define this war, the meat assault. I mean, the name itself is just chilling. And it is exactly what it sounds like. Waves of soldiers, usually with very little training or support, sent straight into enemy fire. But as brutal and insane as it sounds, there's a grim logic behind it.
And this is the key. It isn't just mindless slaughter. It's a cynical tactic. When you have a ton of soldiers you consider expendable, but you're short on experienced people to lead them, you start using your men like ammunition.
Here's exactly how it works. Step 1, you send a small group forward. Their job is not to take the trench. Their job is to get shot at. They are literally bait. Their entire purpose is to make the other side open fire and reveal.
Let's pull back the curtain on a military strategy that's as brutal as it is revealing. This isn't just about the war in Ukraine, it's about how a recruitment system that's just shattered forces a horrifying kind of logic onto the battlefield, a logic where your own soldiers are treated as completely expendable.
And that question, really, it gets to the absolute core of what's happening. I mean, what happens when the pipeline that's supposed to feed a professional army just breaks? Well, the answer, as we're about to see, is that you end up building a machine designed not to win efficiently, but to simply consume bodies.
So, this brings us to the central idea for today, the disposable soldier machine. This is a deliberate strategy where these shocking casualty rates, they aren't some kind of bug in the system. No, they're a feature. They're an expected, almost necessary part of how it all works. And it's a direct result of a system in total crisis.
You know, that professional, all-volunteer army Russia dreamed of? That's pretty much ancient history now. What's taken its place is this desperate, worldwide scramble for bodies just to feed the front lines. The big signing bonuses that used to attract people have lost their appeal, and that's forcing the Kremlin to get, well, a lot more creative and a lot more brutal in how they find people.
And this number, wow, it really gives you a sense of just how desperate things have gotten. A huge part of this new strategy has been to recruit en masse from Russia's prisons. We're talking about an estimated 158,000 inmates who've been offered a pardon if they agree to serve in these high-risk assault units. It's a pretty horrifying deal, right? Your freedom for your life, essentially being used as cannon fodder.
And this hunt for bodies isn't just happening inside Russia. Oh no. Moscow has built this whole transnational system to pull in foreign nationals from at least 135 different countries. We're not talking about a few volunteers here. This is a massive global machine designed to prey on the vulnerable.
Okay, so how are they doing it? The methods are just brutally efficient. For foreign nationals, say from places like Nepal or Cuba,
It's fake job offers or threats of deportation. For the prisoners, it's that pardon we just talked about. And then you've got Russia's own young conscripts, who are supposed to be legally protected from combat. For them, it's a constant campaign of pressure, threats, and even commanders forging contracts to turn them into disposable frontline soldiers.
So all of this whole recruitment mess, it feeds directly into those infamous meat grinder tactics we hear so much about. But it's not just random slaughter. It's a cold, calculated strategy that pops up when you have way too many poorly trained, expendable soldiers and not enough of anything else. You start treating your soldiers like they're just another piece of ammunition.
And here's the tactic at the very heart of it. It's called reconnaissance by drawing fire. Small groups of soldiers, made up of the very people we've been talking about, are sent to advance on Ukrainian positions. But here's the twisted part. Their real job isn't to capture that trench, it's to get shot at. Their mission is to make the defenders give away their hidden locations.
You can break it down into this grim three-step dance. First, you send the human bait forward. Second, the defenders open up, and in doing so, they expose where their machine guns and command posts are. And third, Russia's real firepower, its artillery and its drones, comes in and systematically destroys those targets. Those soldiers in the first wave, they are literally human bait.
Yeah, this quote it sums up the whole horrifying philosophy perfectly. It's a deeply cynical, but in a grim way, logical approach to war when you've decided the lives of your own soldiers are your most expendable asset. The human beings are just there to act like tripwires, to light up the map so the machines can do the real work.
So for these soldiers, the ones treated as disposable, the most dangerous part of their day isn't even the fight itself. It's just getting there. The modern battlefield in Ukraine is this so-called transparent kill zone, just saturated with drones, where even moving across open ground can be a death sentence.
And the scale of this surveillance is just immense. We're talking about a 15 to 20 kilometer deep stretch of land that's under constant watch from the sky. You have drones working in a reconnaissance carousel. One flies until its battery gets low, and another one immediately takes its place, making sure there is never, ever a blind spot.
And this all leads to a really staggering claim from a Russian state reporter, and we should say it's unverified, that something like 80 to 90% of casualties happen before the soldiers even get to the fight. The second a drone spots them, their coordinates are blasted to artillery units, or they become targets for swarms of FPV drones.
So, what about the few who actually make it through that gauntlet? Well, they often find themselves stuck in some forward position. They can't retreat, partly because they're being threatened by their own commanders. There's no way to get evacuated. Their only real hope? That the next wave of disposable soldiers comes up behind them and pushes the line forward just a little bit more.
Okay, so this is where we get to the real long-term cost of all this. This disposable soldier machine isn't just burning through Russia's present, it's actively destroying its future. What we're looking at is nothing less than a demographic and social catastrophe just waiting to happen.
I mean, just look at this number. Western estimates are projecting that Russia could see as many as 1.2 million casualties by early 2026. A number like that for a major power is almost unheard of since World War II. This kind of war of attrition, it is literally hollowing out the very foundations of the country's population.
And of course, this price isn't being paid by everyone equally, not even close. The whole system is engineered to shield the urban middle class in places like Moscow. Meanwhile, it disproportionately targets the poor, the marginalized, and ethnic minorities from these far-flung, working-class parts of the country. It's a strategy that just drives a deeper wedge into the country's social fabric.
When you zoom out and look at the long-term damage, it is just staggering. You've got a massive brain drain of educated Russians who fled, you're hollowing out entire remote towns and the whole prison system. You're even creating this weird, fragile warrior middle class that depends on war salaries to survive. So what's the bottom line? Russia is basically trading its entire demographic future for what amounts to tiny gains on a map.
And this whole thing, it locks the Kremlin into this inescapable trap. It's a vicious cycle. The staggering losses mean they need more and more recruits. But these new recruits are lower quality, which means they're even more likely to become casualties, which, you guessed it, creates an even bigger need for more bodies. It's literally a machine that has to consume itself to keep running.
So, when you see this, it's important to understand it's not a sign of strength. It is a symptom of a deep, strategic rot. These meat grinder tactics, they're the dark but logical conclusion you reach when your system can't produce professional soldiers anymore and has to fall back on coercion, deception, and just brutal battlefield math.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. This machine is unbelievably brutal. It is burning through an entire generation of men, but for how long can it possibly keep running? Can a strategy that's built on literally eating your own future, can that actually be sustainable? That's the question that's going to define not just this war, but the future of Russia itself.